Tonight on Reporting Scotland, a cut to the number of pensioners receiving winter fuel payments. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, unveils a list of measures to plug what she says is a £22 billion hole in the public's finances. Police issue a road safety appeal after 4 motorcyclists are killed in one day.
Sunday was really good weather, so we are going to see more cyclists on the road, and it was just a matter of time, in the borders especially, before we have an accident.
Also on tonight's programme.
Living like this for me has, the COVID has been unbearable. There's no help, and there should be.
The final message from Adina Slater-Engelsman, who lived here for 30 years but returned to the Netherlands to end her life after suffering from severe ME. And we visit the charitable pubs, inspired by a similar idea from Sweden that transformed the communities around them. Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Monday's programme. It was a statement we knew was coming. The Labour government has been trailing that there's a black hole in the UK's finances for most of the last week. Today, the new Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, announced that hole amounted to £22 billion and proposed a number of measures to close it, including scrapping the winter fuel payment for pensioners who are not on benefits and cutting a number of road and rail projects. The First Minister said she'd painted an appalling picture of the country's financial future. Here's our Westminster correspondent, David Porter.
A month on from the election, just what is the state of the UK's finances? Ministers have been looking at the books and say there's a big financial black hole. They accuse the Conservatives of hiding the true picture before voters went to the polls.
The inheritance from the previous government is unforgivable. After the chaos of Partygate, when they knew trust in politics was at an all-time low, they gave false hope to Britain. When people were already being hurt by their cost of living crisis, they promised solutions that they knew could never be paid for.
Not so, say the Tories. They argue this is all about laying the ground for future tax rises. It's as much about politics as it is about economics.
Mr. Speaker, if you're in charge of the economy, it's time to stop trash talking it. What's the point of going to New York or Brazil to bang the drum for more investment if you come home with a cock and bull story about how bad everything is?
Over the last Parliament, we saw the Conservative Party raise taxes on hard-working households again and again just to pay for its own mistakes. So will the Chancellor agree with me that it would be unfair to ask working people to pick up the tab a second time after they already suffered through years of painful tax rises?
So where will the money come from? Winter fuel payments for many elderly people will be axed. Infrastructure projects will be scrapped. For instance, the controversial tunnel and bypass around Stonehenge will be shelved. And the Conservative hospital building programme is also under threat.
We warned against the fact that the Labour Party were not being honest about the state of the public finances. They're now trying to project to the public that this is all new. It wasn't new. They were told about this. They are choosing to stick to Tory fiscal spending rules, and as a result, our public services are going to suffer.
In Edinburgh, calculations as to how Scotland might be affected.
I think what's crystal clear from the Chancellor's statement is that by accepting the approach to the management of the public finances that the Conservatives had, by accepting the same fiscal rules of the Tories, it inevitably leads to spending cuts just like the Tories delivered.
So the Chancellor's first set-piece common statement and also the date of Labour's first budget. It'll come at the end of October with a warning of difficult decisions on spending, welfare and taxes. David Porter, Reporting Scotland, Westminster.
Well, I'm joined from Inverness now by our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser. And Douglas, a lot of the cancelled projects and squeezes were on English promises for roads and hospitals. Do we know how Scotland will be affected, though?
Well, we don't know for sure about how it's going to affect Holyrood's budget, but there's only one direction of travel, and it was clear from Rachel Reeves today that the budget she's going to present on the 30th of October is going to involve tax increases as well as spending and welfare cuts. Not one or the other, it's going to be all three of those. Holyrood could avoid a squeeze this year on its budget, but it's likely to be put off in that case until next financial year, next April. But that squeeze is coming one way or another. Indeed, some of the capital projects being cancelled for England, there's a sign of that happening in Scotland already with national treatment centres, such as the one in Inverness here. Now, most of these have not yet been built. The programme for building them has been cancelled already by the Scottish Government. So this squeeze is already being felt. Happier news today for many of those working in the public sector. Not all of the announcements on pay crossing the border. It does affect people who work in the armed forces, some civil servants in UK departments, senior doctors and dentists. But Scottish teachers and junior doctors, for instance, they get negotiated pay, and these negotiations are going on.
And Douglas, the windfall tax on oil and gas has also been extended. The industry isn't very happy about it, but wasn't a tax increase to be expected?
Yeah, windfall tax had already been introduced by the Conservative government. That's been extended from a marginal rate on profits from 75 up to 78%. Now, no surprise to the industry that that's happening. What's unclear is what's going to happen about the allowances. They can write off tax when they're going to invest. That's going to be cut back to a less generous settlement, said the Chancellor. The industry tonight saying it's very unhappy about the way this has been announced, but there's a lot of lobbying still to go before that budget, a crucial and probably quite painful budget on the 30th of October.
OK, Douglas in Inverness, thank you. It's been a tragic weekend on Scotland's roads. Since Friday evening, 8 people have died in accidents. 2 car crashes claimed the lives of 3 young men in their 20s near Falkirk and a 37-year-old man in South Ayrshire. A female motorcyclist was killed near Loch Gilphead and 3 other bikers died in a crash south of Hawick on Sunday afternoon. Cameron Buttle reports from the Borders.
For 25 years, instructor Tom Prentice has been training people to ride in the Borders. He says when he saw it was a nice day on Sunday, he knew the area would be full of bikers and an accident was more than likely.
It's a really busy place. Sunday was really good weather, so we are going to see more cyclists on the road, more cyclists, as well as other car road users. And it was just a matter of time, in the Borders especially, before we have an accident. So it's always sad to see.
Tom says one of the biggest problems is people not realising that driving on rural roads is very different from towns and cities.
Take them from the city and put them into the country, and then they've got twisted roads, and it's like, wait a minute, coop that corner a wee bit. It's busy about here. So yeah, it's different. It's chalk and cheese.
The Borders attracts bikers from all over, from Glasgow, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Carlisle. And this was the scene of the worst accident of the weekend. 3 people were killed in an accident involving 2 motorbikes. 2 men aged 37 and 29 and a woman aged 23. All of them were pronounced dead at the scene. Shortly after the crash in the Borders, a 29-year-old woman was killed in another accident in Argyll and Bute. On Friday, 3 men in their 20s were killed in a crash near Falkirk, and on Saturday, a 37-year-old man was killed in an accident in South Ayrshire. Police Scotland says drivers have to consider their behaviour on the roads.
I urge every driver and road user to think about their behaviour on the road, be considerate towards others, and help us make Scotland's roads safe for everyone. We all have a responsibility to use our roads safely and to help us save lives.
Police say investigations into all the accidents are ongoing and have appealed for witnesses to come forward. Cameron Buttle reporting Scotland, Carter Bar.
To some of the day's other stories now. And Brian Whittle has entered the race to become Scottish Conservative leader. The West of Scotland MSP is the second person to announce his intention to replace Douglas Ross after the fellow MSP Russell Findlay last week announced he was putting himself forward for the job. Residents near an industrial estate in Livingston have been told to keep their windows closed this afternoon as fire crews tackled a blaze in a car service centre. Part of an industrial unit collapsed in the Houston industrial estate. When the fire broke out this morning, there are no reports of injuries. Scottish sports coach John Anderson, best known as the referee on TV series Gladiators, has died at the age of 92. He appeared on the show's original ITV run from 1992 to 2000. John also coached more than 100 Olympic athletes, including Liz McColgan. A woman from Aberdeenshire who chose to end her own life in the Netherlands recorded a plea for more to be done for people with severe ME in her final days. Edina Slater-Engelsman was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome in 2020 and became confined to bed soon after. As a Dutch national, she took the decision to end her life through assisted euthanasia, which is legal there because of what she said was the unbearable suffering of living with the disease. Edina and her family wanted to share her story in the hope it will lead to more awareness of the condition. And a warning that you may find this report from our health correspondent Lisa Summers upsetting.
I feel physically, cognitively and emotionally trapped. I'm isolated from the world outside, but also from my own family and friends.
Edina Slater-Engelsman recorded these messages just days before she ended her life through euthanasia in the Netherlands. As a lover of the outdoors, she'd spent 30 years living in Aberdeenshire. But after being diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, often known as ME, in 2020, she quickly found herself confined to bed.
And this condition has become unbearable to me and has been for a long time now. To the point that I now want to end my life.
The Netherlands has liberal laws on assisted dying. Under strict criteria, it allows voluntary euthanasia for patients experiencing unbearable suffering. As a Dutch national, Edina moved back home and underwent a year of psychiatric and psychological assessments.
Having to make such a decision has been heartbroken for me. On the one hand, I'm very sad about this, of course. But on the other hand, I feel a huge sense of relief that I'm allowed to die with dignity, with my family and a very close friend next to me.
Edina and her family hope that by sharing her experience, they will highlight what it's like to live with severe ME.
The situation on assisted dying in Scotland is very different. It's currently illegal. A bill to consider it will be debated in Parliament later in the year, but even if it were to become law, it would only be for those with a terminal illness, not those with a severe long-term condition.
ME is thought to affect around 250,000 people in the UK. Charities and patients groups say understanding of the disease is poor, and that's reflected in a lack of services.
ME, whether it's mild or severe, significantly impacts on your life. It takes away a lot of the things that many of us just take for granted. So I think it's devastating that people are not getting the care that they need.
Edinburgh University is carrying out the world's largest genetic study on ME. Researchers hope to publish their first results within the next 6 months.
We're wanting to find what are the root causes of ME. There will be many. We're not just saying that there will be one, that there'll be one piece of DNA that we can point to and go, aha, that explains everyone. That won't be the case. So the genetics that we're doing is going to tell us what to do in the future, and that's the key thing.
In one of her final messages, Edina makes a plea for others who are struggling.
I think the main message from this is that living like this for me has become and has been unbearable. There's no help. And there should be. Yeah.
Edina Slater-Engelsman there speaking shortly before she died. And on tonight's edition of The Nine on the BBC Scotland channel, they'll be discussing what Edina was asking for in her message, the campaign to get more help and support for people who are living with ME. Tonight's main news again. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves has unveiled a list of measures to plug what the government says is a £22 billion hole in the public's finances. Now, when you hear the term goth pub, You may not be picturing mining villages or the 80s strike, but these unique establishments did important charity work in parts of Scotland after the idea was imported from Gothenburg in Sweden. They aimed to encourage responsible drinking and redistributed wealth from the drink sales to support mining communities. Now only a few remain, and Ian Hamilton reports on the role they still play.
In West Lothian, this pub is nicknamed the Leaning Tower of Armadale. It's one of 4 goth pubs left in Scotland, found mainly in mining towns. They were introduced into Scotland over 100 years ago to promote responsible drinking. The idea was to ensure that 95% of profits were used for community benefit, after the concept was imported from Gothenburg in Sweden.
The front of the building was built in 1901. The tower was added on in 1923. All the profit that we make, we tend to give out to the food banks. We support the local football team. We've just signed up for the 2024 Armadale Athletics.
Why was it built?
To keep the people out of the pubs. Yeah, they created the pub.
It seems odd, doesn't it?
Yes, very odd, very odd.
Is it a business or is it a charity first?
Charity. That is, we are registered as a charity.
Billy?
Ian.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Hi there, how are you?
You all right?
Nice to meet you.
And you.
In Ferlin, Stirlingshire, another goth pub was at the centre of a mining community in the 80s. It wasn't just leisure pursuits they paid for, it also paid for critical health care.
Well, going back before NHS was established, we funded the doctor and the nurse in the village.
The pubs themselves were supposed to be severe places where men were not encouraged to stay too long. So theoretically you were not supposed to have games in a pub, entertainments in a pub. In some cases, in the early days of pubs, of goths, you didn't even have lighting or seats or tables.
Polmaze is a bleak and desolate pit now, exactly 1 year after the closure announcement that brought the village of Ferlin out on strike.
The miners' strike began 40 years ago in 1984. Profits from goth pubs supported many mining communities.
In all miners' strikes, it was running things like soup kitchens and welfare payments to the families and so on. In 1984, they were doing a raffle every week, which raised a lot of money to try to give to the wives and children of the miners.
The mines may have gone, but the challenges remain. To stay relevant, Scotland's goth pubs need to balance historical significance with modern demands. Ian Hamilton, reporting Scotland.
Football and Partick Thistle have asked the SPFL to replay their League Cup clash against Motherwell after the Jags were denied the chance to substitute a player. Thistle wanted to bring on Rico Dyack in the 85th minute with the scores tied at 0-0, but the fourth official Greg Suter said the teenage forward had not been listed on the team sheet. It later emerged that he had. If Thistle had won the game, they'd have progressed to the last 16. The Glasgow club have written to the SPFL and the SFA asking for an explanation, an assurance that it won't happen again, and a replay. Now, the SPFL season starts this weekend and the captain of the Premiership's newest club says his side have loftier ambitions than simply avoiding relegation. Dundee United won the Championship last season and will open their Premiership campaign with a treat for fans. They host arch rivals Dundee in the Tayside Derby. Captain Ross Docherty, who faces a fitness battle himself to play a part on Sunday, cannot wait to get going.
I got a few texts straight away. My phone was going mad on that when the fixtures got announced, and I've got a mate or two in the Dundee team as well, so there's been a wee bit of kind of friendly banter there. But for boys who've played in the game before, within the dressing room or around the club, who've been involved in it, they're kind of telling you about it and making you realise that it is a huge game, which obviously I'm under no illusion that it is.
Yes, Laura, nothing quite like a city derby, is there?
Absolutely. And you will have lots more from the Olympics, I imagine, over on the 9
Absolutely.
later.
We'll let you know how Katie Shanahan and Duncan Scott get on in the pool.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. OK, let's find out what else is happening on the 9 on the BBC Scotland channel later with Graham Stewart.
Tonight we'll be digging into the government's plans to plug the country's finances and find out what it means for Scotland. Also tonight, how likely is it the conflict in the Middle East will escalate after the weekend's rocket strike on the Israel-Lebanon border? We look at the issue of deaths on Scotland's roads and what we can do about it. And while it hasn't been the best of summers for camera enthusiasts, I'll be speaking to the Scottish Landscape Photographer of the Year.
OK, now let's take a look at the weather with Chris. And it felt over the weekend that summer kind of had arrived.
Sunday was lovely, wasn't it? Lots of sunshine, a little bit less sunshine around today. Still some lovely photos from our weather watchers. More sunshine tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Very good evening to you. Yes, we had a lot of cloud around today, actually, didn't we? With 1 or 2 spots of rain. This is what's been happening. Let me show you the pressure sequence. You can see low pressure up towards Iceland, sending these weather fronts our way. That's what brought all the cloud, and this cold front's still with us. So there's a bit of evening sunshine around at the moment, but over the next few hours, the cold front sweeps in, bringing some cloud and some patchy rain, but it sort of fizzles out really through the early hours. And then by the end of the night, it's dry with increasingly clear conditions. Temperatures not falling far at all. 11 to 13 Celsius is the overnight low. So first thing tomorrow, any of that cloud still with us will thin and break, and then a much drier and brighter day on the cards. Some lovely spells of sunshine to come tomorrow. There'll be some fair weather cloud around at times, 1 or 2 showers for the west coast, through the Northern Isles as well, but many areas are not bad at all. In that sunshine, up to around 20 or 21 Celsius, largely light winds through much of central and southern Scotland, feeling like summer, actually. Towards the far north and northwest, more of a wind here with a little more cloud, a few showers in towards the Minches and through the Western Isles and across Orkney and Shetland as well, just taking the edge off the feel of things with the strength of that wind. Tomorrow evening, it's dry, lots of evening sunshine to enjoy, and then a clear night follows, so cooler than this coming night. And then midweek, high pressure still with us, situated overhead. So another decent day actually on Wednesday, dry and fine, some spells of sunshine. There'll be some areas of cloud around at times. There'll be 1 or 2 showers, but in the sunshine, temperatures 20 to 22 Celsius come mid-afternoon. So the next 2 days, not too bad at all. However, Thursday and Friday, we start to see a change as we begin August. The high pressure goes and low pressure begins to influence conditions. That means more unsettled. That means some outbreaks of rain. So whilst the next 2 days are dry and fine, Thursday and Friday, bit of a turn from that sunshine to showers or longer spells of rain, but temperatures not falling too far at all. That's the forecast for now.
Should have known August signals the start of the rainy season. Thank you, Chris. Now, tonight's main news again. The winter fuel payment is scrapped for pensioners not on benefits, and road and rail projects are cut as the Chancellor tries to close what she says is a £22 billion gap in the country's finances. And police are urging all road users to consider their behaviour and be considerate to others after 8 people died in road accidents over the weekend, including 4 motorcyclists in one day. And that is Reporting Scotland. I'll have your late news at 10:30 tonight. Until then, from everyone in the team, enjoy your evening. Good night.